brought to you by Accenture Extended Reality. This is Field of View.
What do you think it takes for any company to be able to scale XR? Because we've seen a lot of tactical experiences, but very little strategy behind immersive and 3D and XR in general. What is your take on that?
No, that's a great question. And, I'll tell you what we've seen from the companies that have been able to get over that hump. And essentially, it's a combination of two things. It's one, solving the right problem, making sure that the problem is big enough, valuable enough. And then two, it is a combination of like the right hardware and the right infrastructure software, like business support for it to make it more frictionless. Right. Like I think when the value proposition was, okay, they have to buy a new PC, IT has to support, manage and update a new Windows device. And then there's, the VR headset itself, and it's kind of unwieldy and expensive. And then you're like, okay, if you can get an all-in-one system that self-manages itself, that you can have relatively easy, in terms of device management and making sure it's up to date and making sure there's no issues. Like if it can be more of like an appliance and less like a computer, then I think you can get a lot faster in terms, or lower that friction in terms of the bar. But so I think the combination of the right use case and then the right hardware and hardware infrastructure supporting it, it's definitely one of those things where we've seen the Quest has been amazing for consumers, but it's been a little harder to deploy in the enterprise, right? Like I think it's clear Oculus is doing what they can, but they are, or Facebook is doing what they can, but they are primarily focused on consumer, not enterprise. And so figuring out like those things of just like the stuff that Microsoft does so well in terms of device management, identity management, all this kind of stuff, right? To make it very easy to deploy complex systems and applications into the field. Like we need Oculus to kind of step, or other all-in-one VR headset makers to kind of step up in that way and create that easy to deploy ecosystem, right? I see you kind of nodding, right? Like that's a lot of the feedback I get when I talk to these companies that are like, oh my gosh, like these are
we have other competitors coming to the market. Pico announced the Neo 3 very recently. There is an announcement that is coming very soon from HTC, and things are eating up on that sense.
Yeah.
We know, though, that the true holy grail of XR is to have something that is completely agnostic from the hardware, and eventually something that will create a sort of capital of knowledge for companies that are creating assets in 3D and experiences in 3D. First of all, it's important to create a sort of an optimized pipeline for three-dimensional product and assets. So from design to training to connected worker to marketing and sales and post-sales. So you can use all those 3D data across all the different parts of the value chain. But there is this obviously this future that is in the cloud and is powered by 5G, is powered by Wi-Fi 6, and is powered even by 6G that already is in talks by a lot of people around in the market. Yeah. Can you tell us more your take about this kind of future in the cloud and empowered by high-speed connectivity and low latency?
I also guess as well, it would also be interesting, following on from Nick's point there, is how that has an impact on the kind of companies that you invest in, and I guess what that means for those kind of companies that are being invested in based on the knock-on effect that hardware has.
Sure. It's funny, like a lot of people are like, oh, 5G, why are we talking about it so much? And it's like, well, if you actually look back at history, right, it's like 3G and 4G were so important for unlocking the true capabilities of the smartphone, right? Like that bandwidth, bump up that allowed people to have internet on their phone with 3G and then video on their phone with 4G, right? That enabled really what happened with the smartphone. So it's like the plumbing that needs to get out there. And in that same way, 5G, and potentially 6G, right, will do that same kind of thing where not just increase bandwidth for richer experiences, but more importantly is the low latency. And this is the key. It's like, how do we get from the big bricks on our heads, faces to like smart glass or to like sunglass style form factors? And it's really going to be by offloading the compute into the cloud or into the edge, right? And 5G will have that latency that will make that not just a pipe dream, but something that actually works and functions. But what that means is there has to be an investment in new hardware and software that's going to enable that to happen, right? There's going to have to be potentially new rendering technologies, new file formats for 3D, like all sorts of stuff that's going to enable all of that to work more seamlessly and to be optimized for cloud and streaming solutions. And so with us and how we kind of view Fund 2, 5G does become a bigger part of the equation. And that's why we're working with Qualcomm, Orange, LG Plus, and other telcos to really figure out, understand, and invest smartly into the right technology infrastructure backbone, but also applications that take advantage of it and make sure that they work as we envision it, as we know it should, right? But I think that goal of, okay, what does the next generation look like? If we're saying right now VR is at like the candy phone, like Nokia candy phone or Motorola flip phone, how do we get to the iPhone? How do we get to that next form factor that's going to be really mainstream and mass market in a 10x, 100x way? That is by getting, I believe by leveraging 5G, offloading compute, increasing battery life, increasing comfort, all of those kinds of things. That we'll get there, and hopefully we'll accelerate it.
Sorry, Daniel, go on.
I was going to say, if you take then a company like Wave, which I know that you guys invested in, right?
Yes.
How does a technology like this impact one of those members of your portfolio?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think again, it kind of turbocharges what they do, right? Like this idea of, okay, how do you create? And with the Wave, they're virtual concerts.
Got some dancing right now.
And they're really focused on the social community and the interaction with the artists and performers in real time. So if you go to one of their concerts, you'll kind of see this where, you type a message, it shows up in part of the background, of course, and then the artist can see that, respond to it. But then you can also do stuff like, power up, buy gifts, send gifts, show like impact, change the visuals, vote on elements of it, and then even be part of like it's kind of like the Soul Train dance off where they use the web camera and you can actually be on stage on screen with the performer. But what's really interesting is, okay, well, how does 5G make that better? By lowering the latency, by allowing more people to be concurrent in the same session, by again allowing it to be in more immersive platforms. Right now, the Wave, they're focused on where the audience is with like flat screens, but they started out as a fully immersive system. And it's like they want to go back to those roots, and they're going to need the low latency and the high bandwidth of 5G to make that happen. I mean, definitely doing things like volumetric video and streaming that so you can actually see the face of the performer. Have multiple performers. So it's like, if you want to have a crazy boy band like BTS, all of them perform all of their moves rendered for everyone, you just want to increase that quality. And, another investment of ours, Epic Games, you kind of see where they're kind of pushing the quality of things like metahumans to create more realistic avatars and digital humans. We can see that that's very high bandwidth, and to do that in a way that we can push that into more devices and have a group of people that look at that high quality performing, like that would be a pretty big challenge, and we'd need edge compute to make that happen.
Did you know you can catch this full episode of Field of View and more by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts to not miss another immersive technology moment? Subscribe today.